You are listening to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast, where we strip away the noise, unleash our truth, and align with our highest self. I'm your host, Coach Felicia, a life coach, energy guide, and your biggest believer. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast. I am here with Erica Taylor-Beck, who is the founder and CEO of Authentic Foundations, a leadership coach renowned for her expertise in emotional intelligence, team engagement, and soft skills training for managers. She's been married to her wife for 8 years, and they currently have 9 rescue pups. Or, I'm sorry, pets. Welcome to the podcast, Erica.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So before we get started, I just want to verify how you identify in the LGBTQ community, if there's any specific labels, and any pronouns that you want me to use.
Sure. My pronouns are she, her. Pretty boring. I'm a lesbian. I said lesbian or gay.
Okay.
Pretty basic.
Okay. Awesome. And then before we dive in, I said pups because I have a dog and I just have dogs in my brain every time I see anything with pets. But let me ask you about your rescue animals. That is amazing. I feel like that's my dream life. What kind of rescue animals do you have?
You're not too far off. So I am also the crazy dog lady in our relationship, and my wife is the crazy cat lady. So we have 4 dogs and 5 cats,
Wow.
and they are all rescues. They're strays, or we got them from local rescues or shelters. And believe it or not, our house is much less chaotic than most people imagine. It's when people first come over, they're really hyper and excited, but within 10 minutes, everybody is just lying around in the living room and just hanging out. So it's everyone gets along really well, which is surprising when you have that many animals.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I have one, and right now we don't have a yard or anything, so I feel like I need to not get another one, but every time I see an animal just walking around, does it have a collar on it? Can I steal that dog? No. But I actually seen a little kitten the other day and I almost grabbed it because it was by the
Oh.
road, but then it ran and it was in farm area, so it's probably somebody's cat. But I really want to go to because my dog's a rescue and it was a puppy when I got it. And I wasn't intending to get a puppy. I was like, I'm just gonna get whatever rescue dog because my dog had passed away. And I'm like, if they look like my old dog, I'm gonna get it no matter what. And I just happened to be scrolling and okay, my old dog's name was Kane. I'm like, okay, Kane, if you send me a dog, I'll know. And I literally popped up this puppy that looked like him. And I was like, oh, and it was coming from Texas to a shelter near me. And I was like, oh my God, is he still available? And they said yes. And I had him and he's amazing and adorable, but I'm like, he needs a friend.
They're addicting. Like it's
Mhm.
once you get past the puppy phase, because they're adorable, but it's a lot of work. But once you get past that, you're like, I feel like I need another one.
Yeah.
For one point, like our limit was 3 and then it was 5 and now
Oh.
we're at 9. And so we have not gone more than 9 yet, knock on wood, but we feel like we're at a good place where we can afford them. Everyone gets enough attention. They all get along. So we don't really want to disrupt status quo at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So let's talk about your backstory a little bit and when you discovered who you are, who maybe, I don't know how you grew up, but maybe within your, I guess, your coming out story, or did you always know, or well, take us back.
Sure. So actually, as I was thinking about this, preparing for this podcast, I don't know that I've ever really shared this whole
Oh,
story.
love it.
Um, but I knew as much as you can. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. We
Mhm.
did not really have a gay community. It wasn't really a big LGBTQ plus community around where I grew up. So it wasn't something that I saw or knew much about. But when I was little, I went to a school where all of the grades from K through 8 were in the same building. Not the same school, like the same room. We're not that old. Wasn't a
Yeah.
one-room schoolhouse, but it was in the same building. And when I was in 1st grade, these girls that were in 8th grade, they're only like 14, which in the grand scheme is really young. But when you're 6, they looked like very beautiful adult women type of thing. And I just remember thinking that some were really pretty and I would wanted to date them, if that makes sense. but it didn't know that girls could do that, and so I wanted to be a boy. I didn't feel trans, but I just wanted to that's how I figured you'd had to do it. And so I was really big into boys' clothes. I would get out of the shower and I would comb my hair and slick it back and try to look as boyish as I could. And I grew up just knowing that I liked girls, but didn't really know what it was or anything about it.
Mm,
And so I grew up still liking boys' clothes. And in the early mid 90s, I realized that was when like Ellen DeGeneres had come out on
yeah.
TV, and I remember hearing people in my life say Ellen DeGenerate and make
Mm,
fun of the her coming out, and so I realized that wasn't well accepted and became embarrassed of it because at the time, the Spice Girls were also really big, and my first, like, major crush was Sporty Spice, and I had a younger sister who was really big into Spice Girls, so I was able to get into that with her, and, so I just remember having, like, my big crush was Sporty Spice in the, like, mid-90s, but also trying to hide that because I realized it wasn't okay, I guess, or wasn't accepted to like girls, but I still didn't really know what gay was. So I knew I liked girls, but I didn't really know anything of it, and so I in high school, I tried to have a boyfriend because that's what you do is you get a boyfriend, and I had one, and it was okay. And I tried to, like, go through all of those like, typical roles that you do.
yeah.
And then same in college, like, I dated some people, but it was just more about finding myself, so I didn't really come out until I was in my early 20s, and that was after I worked at a restaurant and had a really good friend that I just started hanging out with all the time and started staying at her house, and at one point, after some odd months, my mom asked me, she said, "Are you in love with" we'll just fake name here, we'll say, "Are you in love with Katie?" And I started to cry, and I realized I said, "Yes, I am, and I don't really know what to do with that." I know it's not really accepted and whatnot. And my parents were great. This fake Katie was not a good person. And so my parents said, "We don't care if you are gay, straight, whatever, just not her. That is a really bad person for you. We don't care if you date women, just not that one." And so that was how it happened. It unfolded over time.
Oh, wow. I love when I hear stories where the parents are accepting and really they take it in such a great way. I think that's amazing and that's wonderful, especially even though society, it sounds, is telling you the opposite, but it was like your parents were still very accepting and loving in that regard. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, it was definitely helpful. But same thing, like my parents didn't really know anybody, I think, that was
Mhm.
gay at the time. And so they were, I don't wanna say closed-minded to it, but just not really open to it until it was their daughter, and then they realized, like, "Oh, we love our daughter, and it doesn't really change anything," and that's, I think, how they came on, but I think they knew because of just again, I used to wear boys' clothes all the time. I wore polos in high school that my grandfather ended up taking from me once I, like, got rid of my clothes, but my grandpa was wearing my high school clothing, which was really embarrassing, but, they were just like, "But it's just Erica. This is and we love her, and if she just is gay, then it is what it is." And so I was very lucky because I know not everybody is.
Yeah. What's something that you wish religious or culturally conservative people understood about your identity without needing to agree per se with it?
Yeah, this one's tough because I know that people are very really passionate about their religion. And
Mhm.
what's funny in a way is that I grew up the school that I went to Catholic school. I went to private school from kindergarten through high school and was not taught that being gay was okay, but it's not a choice. And I know that people think that or that you can just pray the gay away or that you can be gay, but you should still marry a man if you're a woman. And, that's something that you can choose. And if I could have chosen, I would not have chosen this for myself because it's not easy. It's not an easy lifestyle when society, especially depending on where you grew up, if it's not open minded, this is not something that people would actively choose for fun. So it's something that you're born with. And you don't have to agree with that, but just to respect people for who they are. If they're not trying to force themselves on you or their beliefs on you and make you convert in any way, like then just let them live their lives because this is not something that you choose. It is something that you are and that you accept and grow into because most of us, I think, have to unlearn some things to accept ourselves when we
Mhm.
are part of the community. And it's not an easy choice, so it's not something that people would go out of their way to make their lives harder.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you say respect, just respect one another. And I think that's really important because it's not affecting other people. In most cases, it's very harmless for other people unless you have
Yes.
probably the rare I don't even know of a I've met and have friends that are in the LGBTQ community, but I've never heard of anybody like forcing themselves or any kind of things like that. I think people try to scare people away with, oh, if there's a trans person, they might go into this bathroom or they might pretend like they are just for, and there probably is people out there, but I think that there's more majority of people that are harming the LGBTQ plus community than there are LGBTQ plus people harming the like heterosexual or straight community.
For sure.
And so I like that you had said that, and I think that it's really important that I think people think that this is like just the LGBTQ plus community. They might have I'm religious and so I don't believe in gay or whatever. And you shouldn't be like that. And it's a choice. And I think that it's important, like what you're saying, is it's not a choice and you love who you love. And when you get granular at it and you look at people that are in a relationship with male female relationship, I think some of those are they're in them and they don't wanna be in them, and it's not because
Mhm.
they're gay or lesbian or bi or whatever, it's because that they don't actually love that person, and I think that some people have a
Right.
hard time with accepting that, and so they're unhappy within their relationship, and they're doing it because it's society says that this is the perfect relationship, or this is how you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to get married, and you're supposed to have kids, and you're supposed to stay together, and so they feel stuck in their place, and so when they see other people branching out and doing what feels good to them and what it calls to their soul and who they believe they are, whatever that looks like, I think those are the people that are in this and there's probably others, but I think there's a large majority of people out there that are very unhappy in their life right now, that feel like they have to make it work for kids, for society, for
Right.
their parents, or whatever it is, and so it's really difficult for them to even say, "You shouldn't be like that because I have to be like this, and so you should be like this too," or
We
whatever it
should
is
all be
going on.
unhappy.
Yeah, it's kinda I think that we can look at it in the spectrum of LGBTQ, but I think it goes beyond that as well, where there's so many people out there that aren't living their truth, that aren't truly happy with what's going on inside, and they don't know what it is. They're like, "I have the perfect person." They have everything, but they're still not happy. And it just reminds me of this time I was talking to this lady who's still really infatuated with X person and they're with another person. And when they talk about the person that they're with right now, they literally sound perfect on paper. But when they're talking, I can tell that they're not in love with them and they're trying to figure out why. And so I think
Right.
that's really important to note is that you and so many other people in the community, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, have really navigated and are probably still navigating. I think we all continuously evolve, but are navigating who they are and they're okay with figuring that out and navigating that, and other people aren't. And I think that when you're not, you have a tendency to have judgments towards other people because really there's judgments within you that you haven't looked at. Sorry, that was a really long explanation, but I was
No,
trying to
that's
like find
but
the
it's a
word.
perfect way to explain it because I'm big into spirituality and whatnot as well, and one of the I actually just recorded a podcast about this, I think maybe a day or so ago, more for graduates for 2025, but if I could go back to when I graduated, one of the pieces of advice I would have given myself is to define what success and happiness look like on my terms. And it wasn't so much for being LGBT, but it was more about my career. I had quit my career 2 years ago, roughly, and had switched to moving into coaching because I wasn't happy. I thought I was, and like you said, on paper, I was very successful. I had everything that you would want to have, but something was missing. I kept thinking there has to be more to life than working this many hours, and there is. And so I had to go out and seek that, and it's scary because,
Mm.
like you said, society will condition you to believe things. Your parents have wants and desires for you too, like, they hope that you grow up into certain things, and you don't wanna disappoint people. and you don't want to be an outcast because it's hard to be on the outside. But when you wake up 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and you realize that you're living your life for somebody else to be, whether they're happy or to meet their expectations, they're not the ones having to be in your shoes and live that every day. And so if you're not happy with your career, with your relationship, with whatever it might be, yes, it is scary to do something new, but it usually is not as bad, like big or as bad as we think it's going to be when you just accept it. And then the people that are not meant to be in your life at that point, they're going to fall off. And that's going to feel like a loss. And like I mentioned, you should grieve that because it is, but they were aligned with a version of you that you used to be. They're not aligned with who you are now. And when those things fall away, it makes room for the things that are aligned. And then you start to find the people that are supportive and then the opportunities that meet your skills and your desires and things just fall into place when you accept and own who you are. And it's just so much easier, I think, than trying to stuff your real self down to be accepted. And because if you don't like who you are, you're spending all your time with you. Like you're the only
Yeah.
person who's 100% spending time with yourself. And if you're like, I don't really enjoy this person, that's a problem.
Yeah. And the more we stuff it down, the more it just gets I'm all into energies, and so it's like energetically, you're harming
Yes.
yourself, you're creating disease within your bodies, and also you are more susceptible to, like, depression and things like that.
Yes. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I totally agree with you. So some people worry that if they hang out or support LGBTQ plus people, they will be quote unquote hit on. What would you say to someone with that fear?
This one always makes me laugh because I always think of something that somebody had said, which was, "Don't flatter yourself." That's put one way. I don't mean it to sound so harsh, but it could be like hanging out with anybody else. So if you are a woman who is hanging out with a straight male, there's a chance that they might hit on you, but there's also a chance that they might not because they have their tastes, they have their preferences. Maybe I only like people who are really tall or people who are black or people so you have your preferences and they're not necessarily going to hit on you. But even if they do, if you're not interested, you just say that. "Thank you. I'm flattered, but I'm not interested." And that's usually enough because most people should be respectful. However, and this is for any gender, anything, orientation, if they don't take that hint, if you say, "Thank you so much, but no," or "I'm dating somebody else," or "I'm not gay, I'm not bi," if they still continue, then that's a problem because they're not respecting boundaries. And so
Mhm.
that's not a gay, straight thing. That's just a decent human being thing. And so, one, go ahead and hang out with those people. They're probably not going to, especially if they know what your general interests are. But if they do, politely decline. And if they still don't take that hint, then that might be set better boundaries or stop hanging out with them or whatever that looks like. But that's just more of a respect thing than a gay thing.
I completely agree. I have been to a bar before where there was like 3 women hanging out, and I honestly don't know. I would consider the one that came up to me was a lesbian, but they were very aggressive and they like slapped my ass on the back
Oh,
and was
yeah,
like, "Hey."
that's
And I
so
was
inappropriate.
it was, and I was like so shocked because I was like, "Oh my God." But like you said, I don't think it was anything to do with what they identify with. I think that it was the person because I have one of my best friends is a lesbian and like we are so close. We call each other boo all the time and it's like she knows I'm in a relationship and there's like nothing, but
Yes,
we're like I feel like we're like sisters. Like we're and so like you said, I think that we're all just people, we're all just humans and we all have personalities and whatever that shows is going to come out regardless of what you identify with and I think yeah, it might be more likely that you're gonna be harassed by a person that is in the male gender, most likely because they are more aggressive in that respect, but there are some in every community.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I love what you said. It's don't flatter yourself because I always think that too. I'm like, it's a compliment for one, for anybody.
Yes.
And then for two, it's if you're somebody, regardless of what you identify with, if you're interested in somebody, how are you going to know if they're interested in you if you don't approach and start talking to them? I love that answer. What was your journey like discovering your identity, and how did you know it was, like, true for you, even if others didn't understand it? And this kinda goes back to the beginning, right?
But I think I knew it was true because when you're young, you don't really know anything about sexuality or anything. So I had these crushes on these girls, and that's how I knew I liked girls. But it was very innocent. It wasn't anything that was told to me. It wasn't anything that I had seen on television. So it's not like it was something that where I was groomed in any way. And so that's how I know it's real because it just was. It always was like that. I had never felt like that about boys or men, and so it's just is, but the journey, it was because I didn't have those resources to understand it or know about it until I was a little bit older. I wish I had, and so I love that you're doing these podcasts and trying to get this out there so folks have better, just more resources from real life people who are going through it because everybody's story is different. There is not
Mhm.
like one standard coming out story, and so I wish I had more resources to know what I was going through and that while it wasn't quote unquote the standard, it wasn't abnormal. There are other
Mhm.
people, I didn't have access to them. And I grew up feeling really ashamed of who I was and trying to keep that down and trying to be straight. Like I said, I wanted to have a boyfriend because that's what you do in high school and college. Like all your friends are trying to date. So you're like, yeah, I want to date. But I didn't really want to date and I didn't understand what was wrong with me. And it took me, like I said, until like early 20s. I was a really slow, like late bloomer. It took me that long to really put it all together that this is what it is. But then when I finally came out, like it was I was like, all of my identity was like, okay, now I'm gay. Now that I finally can be it, like was really excited about it, but also still ashamed about it because it still wasn't super well accepted. That journey was it was challenging. It's probably easier than a lot of people. I know a lot of folks have a really rough ride, but it was just really confusing because even though I'd always known, I didn't really know, if that makes sense. I know that's a
Yeah.
really confusing statement, but I knew I had these feelings, but I didn't understand what they were or what to do with them until much, much later. And like, oh, this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, and I bet after you finally felt like you put it together, you probably had this, like, sense of relief and, "Oh, this is who I am. I finally figured it out."
Yes. I felt
Yeah.
like a new world of possibilities, if that makes sense, because I had always just limited myself to trying to date guys. And I met some really fantastic guys, but just it never really had that, like you said, on paper they look perfect, but like just didn't have that spark because of course they didn't. And so once I realized, and I also had moved from Pennsylvania to North Carolina at the time, like shortly after I had come out. And so I was able to, this is back in the days of MySpace, but I started making friends with people on MySpace who were in the community because I wanted to go out to gay bars because we had them here. We had places to go where you could be out and make friends. And so I was so excited to have that opportunity to meet like-minded people who I wouldn't feel as embarrassed about and I could be myself. And it was just so exciting and such an opening experience in so many ways.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing, and I think that for especially in the younger years, I think there's so much confusion just in general of who you are and how you relate to the world. So I think there's that, and also people that are navigating in that space of wondering who or what they're attracted to, who they feel like they are inside. It can be even more confusing. So I don't necessarily, I know you said late bloomer, but I think that's like a general, yeah, some people are like, this is it and this is me. And I always have, even people that know their career that were younger and they're like,
Yes.
I'm going to do this. I always envy those people because I'm like, I'm so confused. I don't even know. I don't know what I want
Right.
to do. I want to do everything. But yeah, I think that's a really normal feeling for a lot of people. So, what does pride mean to you personally, and how has it evolved over time?
I love this question because especially now it is Pride Month, so it's big. And I think when folks hear pride, they think about rainbows and parades and big shows of enthusiasm. And yes, like that part, it is exciting. But for me, pride has evolved. Now I just turned 42 a few weeks ago. And pride has evolved for me where like I'm really proud of just my really quiet, boring life. Like I said, been married now. We've been together for 9 years. We have our nine pets. We both I work from home and she's in law enforcement. And We love to go out in nature and do our thing. We both volunteer and it's boring. It is so boring. We don't have these wild, crazy lives and stuff. So I sometimes think that sensationalized on TV, like the amount of drama and the amount of different relationships people are having. And like, it's been a really boring monogamous
Mm,
relationship now for close to a decade. And I love that. And I am so proud of the fact that it's such a non event now. And that's something that is exciting too is that, yes, gay. And it was such a big deal for me when I first was able to come out in my early 20s. But now that it's been 20 years, it's just of a small part of my life. It's like one of the least interesting parts about me maybe anymore. And it just is, oh yeah, if you're like, oh, I have a husband, people don't really get excited about that. And to me, like, people who know me, it's, oh yeah, my wife. And it's just a non-event. And I think for me, that's what I'm most proud of is that it is just become so normal.
mm,
And that's what it should be for, I would love for everybody to just be able to exist. Like our neighbors, we get along fine. Don't now, going in certain places, I definitely am more mindful. Like I'm very out and I'm open about it, but I don't necessarily broadcast it if it's an area where I don't necessarily feel like it's safe. We used to
mm,
travel a little bit overseas, certain places we were cousins or sisters, and we were not spouses because you want to be mindful of that. But
yeah.
in general, on a day to day basis, it's not a big deal. And I love that.
Yeah, I think that that's I get what you're saying with going to other places or going outside of areas and you're not quite sure. I My fiancé is Samoan, and honestly, going into, like, Idaho and things like that is it's scary. I never thought of those things
Right.
because I never had to, but I have seen the racism that happens within just the skin color. It doesn't even matter
Yeah.
what nationality or ethnicity you are, but it's something that has helped me, in my opinion, open my eyes to it. Because when you're surrounded by people that are the same and that look like you really are ignorant to what
Yes.
goes on. People can tell you, but you're really ignorant unless you actually see it and experience it for yourself. And
Mm.
I think that is an important thing. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have stories is also to have people that aren't really sure why people are part of this community and maybe they're curious and they're heterosexual and they don't think of and whatever it is. I also wanna bring education to those people and be like, "Here's, like, real people with their real stories," so that you can have a glimpse of that and understand it
Right.
more because, like I said, sometimes people can say, "There's this or that," and you're just like, "Yeah, it goes on," but you don't really think of it fully, and I think it is really important for all of us to feel safe and anybody's preference should be normal, doesn't matter what it is, like you said, because everybody's just trying to live their best life, and if they're a good human, then none of that should really matter.
And there's an element of privilege.
Mm,
But both, I would assume, identify as white, and that's a privilege in itself. And I am straight passing. So if you were to meet me on the street, typically I most people assume that I am straight. I always
mhm.
get told you don't look gay, which I don't know always know what that means. But I'm grateful because I can blend in wherever I need to. And that I am aware is a privilege too.
Mhm.
Because sometimes as soon as you look at someone, you can tell right away that they are a member of LGBTQ. And that sometimes puts a target on them. And typically I just look like a fashionably challenged middle-aged woman because I like to wear my sporting clothes and my yoga pants. But I just look like a lady who's running some errands and not necessarily a lesbian,
Yeah,
and I'm aware of that, and that's something but I and appreciate that too.
yeah, which I again, I like you said, it shouldn't matter,
Mm,
but it is something that is beneficial in certain areas and places at this time in our world, which is
yes,
sad.
it is
Uh,
sad. But one thing too, we're talking just in general, like, I've learned something recently about, like, critter brain and the way the brain craves safety,
mm,
and it views as anything outside of the same as being something fearful, something to be worried about, it's a threat, and so when you grow up, especially like I grew up in a small, mostly white community where there wasn't a lot of gay folks, anything outside of that feels threatening to people, and so when
mm,
people are threatened by something or don't understand it, then there's hatred or there's some kind of negative attitude toward it. And that just, it's really a very, I don't say prehistoric, but in a way, prehistoric way of
Yeah.
viewing things where it's just, it's your, way, your base way that your brain works. And so I understand why people, if it's other and it's different than what you're used to, why people are, whether it's afraid of it or why they want to, I would say hopefully they wouldn't want to harm it, but some people do. But it
Yeah.
comes from that wanting to stay safe. And the thing is that like for most people in the community are not trying to harm anyone. They really just want to exist as
Yeah.
themselves. And you might not like it for whatever reason, but if they're not actively doing anything to you, then why does it matter so much? Because they're not trying to hurt you. They just want to be.
I was listening to Loke Van Minnen. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so.
Them? Have you heard of them?
I have not heard of them.
They're amazing. Poet, comedian. I absolutely love listening to I just listened to their book, but there was and I am not gonna say it is amazing, but it's basically like this the first portion of, like, them trying to bring awareness to the gender and non-binary and all that stuff. It started with gender, but now it's expanded, and they were talking about just everything and how our society is trying to like structure like it benefits the I guess authorities in the world for us to be structured in a certain way, and
Yeah.
when it's not, it's threatening, and so it's like the more that we keep society in this, like, box, the safer they are, the, like, authority figures are to keep control, basically. And even I always think of it as, like, consumerism, but I think it goes beyond that for sure. But it opened my eyes when I heard it in that way because I was like, "Yeah, I think I understand non-binary and I understand being who you are and all these things," but then when I think of it in that aspect, I'm like, "Whoa, that goes beyond gender." And it blows my mind a little bit to think about it in that way because I can't remember what I was doing, but I was just thinking of something in the sense of, like, masculine and feminine, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing it." I'm
Yeah.
literally adhering to these structures that were keeping us confined in our thinking, and it reminded me of the oh my gosh, I can't think of it right now, but it's about I can't remember the title, but it was basically wrote during slave times, and it was how and a white person wrote it of how to keep your slaves obedient.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was about like what they're gonna do, how you do it, how you're gonna rape the women so that you're breeding the white in there, and then you're gonna make sure that the lighter skinned is given special attention and it was just all this it was crazy, and I remember reading it in college, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," and I wish I remembered what it was. But it was like, okay, there was this structure. Is this gender's a part of it, but is this masculine, feminine part of a bigger scheme, part of a bigger like, when you think about jobs and you think about just the workplace and how most people think women can't lead because they're too emotional, they're too this, they're too this. We're always categorizing into those 2 boxes for so many things,
Right.
and there's a lot of men that are not strong, and there's a lot of women that are strong,
Mhm.
and vice versa. It's not a male versus female thing. Yes, there are probably the majority that they have different adaptability and things like that if they're building muscle and stuff. But in general, you can't pick out and say all of you is like this and all of you are like this. So yeah,
But we
kind
love to
of
categorize. We love to
yes.
label, and it just helps things in our brain to be able to organize. But there's a
Mhm.
lot of structure, and there's a lot of that, like you said, behind the scenes hierarchy of things and like how it actually works. These systems that we have that we're meant to control that
Yeah.
we're not really aware of, or at least not everybody is aware of. And it's like getting that out there and helping people to see, yes, this is how it's always been, but that doesn't mean it's how it always has to be. It's not, maybe it's not a good thing that this is how we're doing things.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it reminded me of that when you were talking about just judgment on people when they are in a certain area that have majority of people think and act like this, and then when you go outside of step outside of that, and how it's so important to step outside of that and really understand and question. Always question, but yeah, so anyways, the last thing that I wanna ask you, because on this podcast, is the Unleash and Align is all about unleashing and aligning what that means to you. So, in the context of this Pride Month or your journey or your identity, what does being unleashed and aligned mean to you?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about defining happiness and success in your own terms. And that to me, I feel the most unleashed and aligned than I probably ever have because I broke away from what is normal. And I,
Mhm,
like I said, quit a 20-year career, successful career, and started a business from nothing because it's something I feel is needed in the world. And it's something that I'm passionate about. And it's crazy not having that steady paycheck like I had because I was making good money. I was an executive in corporate culture. And now I'm an entrepreneur, but I get to make my own hours. And so for me to feel aligned with for me, success is like time freedom. I'm not tied to my desk all day. I can, after this call, if I want to go outside and not get on my computer the rest of the day, I can do that. And I
mhm.
couldn't do that before. And that's something that seems so trivial, but it brings me so much joy. And just to be able to do what I feel aligned with and not feel like I have to go buy some pre-written book. Here's what society tells you to do. You
Yeah,
graduate, you get a job, you work till you're X years old, and then you retire. And I'm not doing that
yeah,
anymore. I don't buy into it. I don't think there's definitely some things we need to do. Like I'm still paying taxes and doing all like the normal things, but there are parts of what we think are normal that I'm not buying into. And it makes you a bit of an outcast. And some people think maybe I've hit a midlife crisis and maybe I'm crazy, but I am so much more me than I feel like I've ever been. And I am so much happier than I've ever been. And I don't know. I feel like if I'm not saying everyone should just quit your job and wing it, figure out what makes you happy. It's going to look different for everybody, but it's okay to do that and bet on yourself.
such an amazing ending to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation, Erica, and I'll link all of the amazing things that you do and how people can reach you in the show notes. But yeah, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review so that we can connect with more people to develop our mind, body, and spirit.